hop in. It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out for the program today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Wonderful to be here. I always love having some good conversations about this type of topic.
For sure. So let's begin our journey with this. I always start with this question, and it's 6 years ago. This pandemic was changing so much about the way we live. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you work and live today?
Great question. The interesting thing for me is I actually did a fundamental career change in that very moment. I started a job as the chair of the Department of Business at University of New England, summer of 2020. And so I actually moved from Pennsylvania to Maine in the midst of all of that, and I was leading a business program as we built it into a college of business during that chaotic couple years where we were trying to figure out how to actually teach and how to do all of these things. So, from a professional perspective, that was a big shift for it. But the other thing that happened in that moment is that if you remember, there were a lot of amazing things that people were doing. Suddenly, we were thrust into this moment of no one knowing how long something was going to be happening, what things were going to be over quickly, what things we were going to have to fully redesign how we did things. And so that really, for me, got me back to this question, which is really what I focus on now, which is how do we thrive in a chaotic world? And what I think that the pandemic taught us is that we can. We remember a lot of the things about it that were negative, but if you remember, we also all said, all right, this is what we have now. So we're going to do things differently. And it turned out it was okay, right?
Yeah.
With that. So that to me was the beginning of my question, which really was about how is it that it is that as adults we fear uncertainty, but uncertainty actually is also the trigger for positive things, which is innovation, surprise, memories. All of those things come from uncertainty. And so that was the beginning of that particular path. Really kind of started with watching how myself and others were reacting in this really unprecedented moment.
For sure. So,
Long answer, right?
yeah, no, I like it. And it kind of sets up a lot of different things I want to ask about the work you're doing. If I put you in front of a bunch of 12 to 13-year-olds at career day and they wanted to know what you do for a living, how do you synthesize your day job into something digestible to their brains?
Right. So the core thing that I do is I help people thrive when they have no idea what's going on around them, and that I help people develop the skills to be the person who acts when everyone around them is frozen in place. So if I'm talking to 12 to 13-year-olds, I'll talk about first responders there. That if you think about those people who know how to create structure in the most chaotic emergency moments. What is it about them that allows them to do that? And those types of skills can be developed. And that's really the work that I do.
So, what did you want to be when you were that age? What was your big dream, the big job?
I love the outdoors. So I think what I really wanted to be when at 12, 13, I wanted to do something that allowed me to be outside. So park ranger
Yeah.
probably would have been top of that list, right? And honestly, um, I had no idea even when I entered college, I actually went in undecided and really kind of was just exploring and looking for things with that. But I knew I wanted to get outside. And so, interesting thing is, I actually worked for the National Park Service for 2 summers while I was in college as well. So,
I always remember the Dennis Miller when he used to be really funny. At one point, he said, "Where does a park ranger go to get away from it all?"
right.
It's like I've always wondered. So, let me ask you this: take me back to where you were born and raised. Are you originally from Maine?
Actually, I grew up in Massachusetts,
Okay.
and my family went to Maine every year, and we camped for about 2 weeks. And it was every year growing up. I had this wonderful opportunity to get together with my cousins for 2 weeks, and it's the only time I saw them all year. And we'd camp together, and we'd explore, we'd hike, and we explore the coast of Maine. And in fact, that again is something that kind of I've now pulled back to when I think about what is it that creates memories and wonder. And you think back to when you were a kid, what do you remember? And you remember things that were unexpected. So every year we'd go to Maine, right, for 2 weeks and explore that. The things I remember is when something weird happened, like we got lost in the woods, right? Or someone fell into the lake somewhere, right? Like, and it's those things that sort of anchor our memory and make it rich. So yeah, that's the only other thing I'll say about my background is I then left New England for my most of my adult life. I went to Baltimore. I went to Seattle for a while, and I spent 20 years in Pennsylvania. So it really was just in 2020 that I found my way back to New England. Love it up here. I'm not leaving now.
All right. So let me ask you this. Take me back to your childhood roots. What were the foundational elements, the seeds that were planted that has become your work, that has become
Mm.
this focus on the
Mhm.
certainty of uncertainty?
Well, so the there was I, I'm going to answer that question actually by connecting it with a research study that connected me back to my childhood roots. So in 2015, there was a study that was published that really showed that 10-year-olds do not exhibit what we call ambiguity avoidance. And that is when given two options, one option which has you know the probabilities of the choices, and a second option which is equally as good, but you don't know the underlying probabilities. Almost all adults in that situation will choose the result that you can assess probabilities on. And this is just something we call ambiguity avoidance, and all adults have it. Children who are 10 years old do not have this. They are indifferent to those choices. And that got me thinking about what happens between 10 and 20 that changes things. But then that got me to start thinking about, well, what was I doing when I was 10 years old? And I tell this story in my book about remembering the day I was allowed with a friend of mine to cross this busy street for the first time and explore the woods on the other side. And it was so exciting because we had no idea what we are going to do and what we are going to see there. And that sense of how not knowing is what created the wonder, right? And that created that excitement is really the core that I then want to, as adults, I want us to start kind of thinking back to. You you might be kind of trying to avoid uncertainty now, but when you were 10 years old, you actually, a big part of what you were doing was exploring, trying to understand things, asking questions, looking for the adventure, right? So it was in you. And that's the key thing is that each one of us had this sense of wonder at some point in our lives. It's not about trying to create something you never had. It's about rediscovering something that you always had, which
Yeah.
is, adventure, not knowing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's how we see something new and learn.
Yeah. So who's been your inspirational force? Who's been kind of a hero for you that's allowed you to find your place professionally in your life today?
Well, this is going to sound very predictable, I would say, but that my partner, I married a wonderful woman who is in many ways opposite me in terms of her approach to uncertainty and change. And yet, she has she has worked through life with this ability to sort of anchor on something, right? And to make it structured while I'm out there always looking for something that's like new. And so as strange as it is, having conversations with for 30 years with my best friend who perceives change and uncertainty in the opposite way as me has really allowed me to sort of figure out when I'm kind of going too far, when I need to pull back. How is it that we create structure for others? And I think she's inspired me more than anyone because she's also one of the most creative people I know, at the same time that she's also kind of anchored in certainty. So I don't know if that makes sense,
Yeah,
but
it
that's
does.
kind of the
Totally
way I
makes
think
sense.
about this,
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. So let's get into your book, Certain About Uncertainty. Talk to me a little bit about what made you want to write this and
Mhm.
what you're hoping the reader will get out of this book.
So I've spent a good part of my career helping organizations plan for uncertain futures. And what I started to realize was that um, what I really loved was helping individuals instead of organizations. I mean, I still work with organizations, love that, but it's really when I saw leaders start to look differently at the chaos around them and started to see ways that they could actually help their teams deal with it if they shifted their mindsets. And so once I started to realize that I loved seeing that, and when I saw that aha in someone else's eyes, that's what I wanted. I wanted to focus more on this, that what happens at the individual level. So I started digging into the different people that I knew and the different research out there about people who thrive in uncertain moments and looked for patterns. I did, and I drew on some of my own research in this area as well. And that really allowed me to see that there are really these three core capabilities that people who are good at this do well. And it's not that you pick one or the other. You really have to do all three of these well. And that became the foundation for what I call uncertainty intelligence, which is a capability that you can develop that is really about, I think of it as see, react, prepare, are the three core parts of that allow someone to thrive in that moment. And so that's my answer really is I wanted to get individuals really focusing in on that idea that you can thrive. You don't have to be overwhelmed when everything about the world seems chaotic around you.
And we're living in a very specific time now where there is all of these levels of uncertainty between, immigration and war and all these things that are happening.
Mhm.
How paramount, how much have you fine-tuned your approach based on the way America has unfolded, say, within the last year or so?
So there's a couple things about this that I think are important, and one is that each one of us does have this desire to be certain about things. And so we focus that often on our personal lives and our professional lives, sort of what's going on day to day, and how can the things we can control, the things we can manage. For all of us, the level of uncertainty and chaos in the rest of our environment pushes down on us and makes it harder for us to manage the local uncertainty. So, one of the things to be aware of, not just for yourself, but for those people that work with you and for you, is that a lot of people are carrying around a higher level of anxiety because of these things that are happening that they feel passionate about that are outside of their control. And I think it's important for us to have empathy about that
Yeah.
and realize that different people are sort of at sort of different levels of potentially at a breaking point. And it's got nothing to do with what's happening locally as much as it's sort of it's all of these other things that are going on. So
Yeah.
for me, it's a lot about the empathy
Yeah.
of what's happening.
Yeah, I totally get it. So, there's all these examples in our world of people that face uncertainty all the time and do
Mhm.
it well, from musicians to high-level athletes to CEOs, visionaries like Jobs and other people. But if you could meet one person alive on the planet right now that's done a really good job at that, that you could talk to and that might illuminate a little bit more of what you're doing, who would you love to meet and talk to?
So interesting question. The My background is in business, and so I often look towards people who are have successfully transformed businesses, and so my mind immediately goes there. And So the person that comes to my mind is actually someone who in the United States now also has been gotten involved in a lot of public policy issues. It's Reid Hoffman,
Yeah.
who is the CEO of Netflix. And Netflix is overtold as a business story. Too many people talk about it. But what fascinates me about what he has managed to lead at Netflix is that they have survived multiple transformations about how we claim our media,
Yeah.
right? How it is that we and they've led that transition, but they have also successfully changed their business multiple times just ahead of the moment when their business was going to collapse.
Yeah.
And so that ability to do it multiple times is something I think is very rare because you do it once and you're like, yes, I nailed it, right?
Yep.
And,
Yep.
and I'm not going to worry about that again. So
Uh-huh.
he's one that I would be very fascinated
Yeah.
to have a conversation about how do you look ahead to understand what's the next uncertainty that you want to be able to see around the corner before others do.
That's interesting because I hadn't thought about them mailing discs in the mail, and that was the bread and butter for all of us for so long. And
Mhm.
now it seems like an antiquated notion because it's all digital.
Right, right. So it went from that when they were taking on Blockbuster
Yep.
to shifting over to it was a little touch and go when they shifted over to streaming, right? They lost some customers because that was a big shift. And then going into sort of being the streamer that had all of the content and then shifting over to developing your own content and owning that side of the business. Those are all fairly fundamental shifts that
Yeah.
they've been able to do.
I remember meeting a club owner in Kansas City at one point that we were talking about possibly, producing radio for his club. It's a big one. It's called the Green Lady Lounge. And he really wanted he wanted the content that he recorded in his club, he wanted to use that exclusively.
Mhm.
And it's because of the licensing and all the rights. And it was right around the time that all these studios, from Netflix to Amazon to Apple, they were all doing the same thing. So they don't have to worry about royalties. And that's why some of them get stuck with not being able to pull in content because the fees are so high. So sometimes it's like, wow, I don't know what the overall perception of them making it is, but I think from a business standpoint, it's genius because they own all of it. They produce it, they pay all the actors and the crews, and then they just get to keep it forever.
Hmm.
And then,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and of course that's going to that whole model is going to be upset as well because
Uh-huh.
it keeps recreating itself, right?
Yep.
So and just because Netflix has done this well so far doesn't mean they're going to get the next one right, whatever
That's
that
true.
next one is,
That's
right?
true. It's an ever evolving. Speaking of ever evolving, you're in a business of getting into uncertainty and helping people navigate the unknown. What is it every day for you that helps you stay on top of everything that's happening? Because AI is a part of this
Mhm.
equation, the modern forces of living in this world that we live in, and just people. When people get together, things happen. What is that energy for you every day to face the uncertainty and to do it at a high level to help your clients and then take care of your own soul?
So, well, that last part's really key. And for me, I live on the coast of Maine. Every morning I run. I get to run through the absolutely beautiful area. And that's so important to me to get outside and just be in that space and in that environment, right? So that grounds me every morning when I do that. The a, I kind of have this luxury. It's so fun. I actually get to talk with experts and ask them, what are you most uncertain about? And that is fascinating to me. And that's actually what keeps me going is that it's not just me saying, all right, well, what do I see on the horizon? Right? It's me asking people who spend a lot of time thinking about this, what do they see on the horizon? And that's what's so exciting is that's how I'm constantly learning simply by asking that question. Something I work with students with and because my other job here is I'm a faculty member and dean at University of New England. So I teach 20-year-olds. And one of the things that we focus on is asking that question when you're meeting with different people is, hey, so what are the things that you're looking at? What is it that you're tracking that you'd be curious to get an answer to? And just asking people what they're thinking about is allows you to learn and understand where the edge of things are. Because if you don't ask that question, people are going to tell you what they are confident about. Very few people ask them to tell you what it is that they're uncertain about.
Sure.
So you get a much more reflective answer for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that gives me a lot of energy as I get to ask that question
Uh-huh.
to some pretty smart people.
Yeah, for sure. So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into that 18-year-old version of you, ready to go
Mhm.
out and change the world. and you
Yeah.
and you walk into a room and you there's a film projector and you click play and there's a 60-second highlight reel of the life you've lived, the choices you've made. Would that young version of you believe your life turned out this way so far?
No. No. So, in some ways, I think I would be absolutely fascinated because as I mentioned earlier, I did not have a clue
Yeah.
what I was going to do at the age of 18. I also, though, didn't have a whole heck of a lot of self-confidence in who I was.
Yeah.
So I think it would have absolutely stunned me to know that I've created a career where I am always in front of people and I'm always challenging people to talk about what they don't know. I think that would have not that person would have been foreign to the 18-year-old me.
Yeah. So let's say you walk into a room of everybody that you've worked with throughout the years, colleagues, um, students, everybody that's known you in a professional sense, and you could go to a podium and tell them one fun story about your life. Maybe the first concert you went to, jumping out of an airplane, a wonderful place you traveled to that was life transformative, something that would humanize you a little bit to that room. What story would you tell them?
So when right before I started graduate school, I quit my job a few months early with a friend of mine who was also about to start law school. And we both quit our jobs early and we hopped in a car in Baltimore and we decided we are just going to go backpacking through Alaska. And we spent 3 months
Wow.
hiking through Alaska. And the way we did it is we didn't have a plan. We said we're going to go to this place. We're going to hike in for 5 days and then we'll come out, figure out where we're going to go next. And that's how we did it. And by doing it that way, we kept meeting the most interesting people who would travel with us for sometimes 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That people hitchhiking, people waiting for adventures in different ways. But more importantly, by not knowing where we were going, every person we met told us where we should go. And so we found hikes and we found state parks that we never would have found if we tried to plan it from the get-go. And so um, I would tell that story, and I would also tell the story about the unique people that we met and how some of these nights were some of the most memorable nights of my life because of the random people that I found sitting around campfires with
That's
them.
amazing. That's very cool. I did that in my 20s. My friends and I, we left Kansas City and we were
Mhm.
just going to go across the western portion of the United States. So we found people that we knew along the way and then just went to areas and just went it to this day. It was one of the seminal trips of my life. It was a couple of weeks and it was great.
I gotta say, there's something that we have these what ifs as
Yeah.
well.
Uh-huh.
And one of the what ifs for me is that on a beach in Alaska on 4th of July, I ran into a person who I graduated from college with.
That's
And
crazy.
he was saying, "Hey, so do you want to stay in Alaska? Because I'm leaving my job and I was told I should find my replacement." And it was a kind of a cool job that he had. And so for about 30 minutes, I seriously considered this, not going to graduate school and just staying there and
Yeah.
taking that job, right?
That's amazing. Just the whole architecture of that, from the coincidence to the opportunity. That's really
Mhm.
cool. So I'm going to go back to that highlight reel that was played. What are you the happiest about, the proudest of in that highlight reel of your life?
I have found a way to use what I've learned and to use my background to help other people be more confident in their own abilities.
Yeah,
And I think that is an amazing thing to be able to do.
yeah,
And to be able to see it in the moment when you see the people who felt like they didn't know if they could do this suddenly realize, yeah, I can do this.
yeah.
Uh, I think that's the main thing for me. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, the students, everyone that gets your book, but you run the show. You're the one driving your perception. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
So I'm very open to not knowing where things are going.
Yeah,
So and I present as a very friendly person, and I try that to not just be the way I present. I really do try to find the connection with people that I'm with and create something together in that moment with them. So um, I would say overall, the perception of me is probably actually competent, somewhat reserved and quiet, but overall someone that you're glad you met.
I love it. I feel like that right now. So let me ask you this. If anyone wants to get your book, the resources, learn more about anything and everything in your world, where's the best place to go?
So the best place to go is it's my website, which is certainaboutuncertainty.com. That's actually with a dash between those words.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
certain about uncertainty with a dash .com. And it gives you a more of a background about the book and some of the other work that I do right now. And that's probably the best way to track me down. People are always welcome to add me on LinkedIn as well.
Okay.
There's 10,000 John Austins out there. Look for the person who's doing work on uncertainty.
Right on. And I will make it easy. I will put links in the show notes. John, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the time, Joe, as well.
Yes.